that this individual had no right to drive a car into them and kill people, and killing her and injuring others, some of them very seriously. This is absolutely unacceptable. It cannot be countenanced. The president has directed us to get after it. Our FBI people are working on it assiduously. Our United States attorneys and civil rights divisions are focused on it. Justice will be done.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions yesterday morning on CBS This Morning announcing that the Justice Department would and its Civil Rights Division would be investigating the events of last Saturday in Charlottesville, Virginia. But there are questions about the nature of that investigation. And with some of those questions, we are pleased to welcome from Newsmax Washington our good friend Larry Klayman, founder first of Judicial Watch, now the founder and the very active intellect and energy behind the organization known as Freedom Watch. Larry Klayman has etched such a place for himself in the public debate that even the Hollywood left sat up and take notice as a character in the NBC drama The West Wing of a few years ago was patterned after our good friend, but he joins us now in all his reality and personal image from Newsmax Washington. It's Larry Klayman. Larry, it's great to have you back on our program here on Newsmax TV this morning.
Thank you for those kind words.
Yes, sir. Now, well, we're happy to offer those kind words because some people are thinkers, other people are doers, and you are someone who combines both. You bring an intellect and an energy to your advocacy and endeavors that many of us have admired for a long time. And in fact, you have penned an article that appears on our parent website, Newsmax.com, and the headline might surprise some people because it reads, Sessions abdicates his responsibility regarding Charlottesville. What are your concerns about the Attorney General and the investigation in Charlottesville as it stands now, Larry?
The Attorney General, who's a very nice man, I actually got to know him as a young lawyer when he was U.S. Attorney in Mobile, Alabama, had a matter in front of him, and saw him in later years while I was running Judicial Watch. So this is not personal, but he's very reflexive. You know, he's been called a racist unfairly. Everybody in this country that challenges the left, that challenges Black Lives Matter, that challenges Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, and the rest of these vigilantes is called a racist. So he's very reflexive. Now, yes, there should be a Justice Department investigation of what happened at Charlottesville and the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, that, you know, one of which killed this young lady very tragically. But there should also be investigation of what the left did there. This group called Antifa, which is a radical leftist fascist group, which also engaged in violence. And President Trump's exactly right about that. It was on many sides. And also you had the Black Lives Matter crowd there. And as you know, JD, I have lawsuits in Dallas, Texas, over the massacre that occurred there over a year ago, where 5 cops were killed, 7 critically wounded. I represent a Mexican-American father whose son was killed, a policeman. I also represent a very valiant African-American, Dimitri Penny, a Dallas police officer who was assaulted during that raid. And they have the courage to stand up to this tyranny of the left, but apparently our Attorney General does not, and he's been cowering. And I wanted to add one other thing. I've asked him to review a couple cases. Now, we've learned that perhaps the president's going to pardon Sheriff Joe Arpaio from your great state of Arizona, but he abdicated his responsibility in conducting a review of that, and Sheriff Arpaio was unfairly convicted by a Clinton-appointed judge. And I've asked him to review simply, neutrally, the prosecution of Klayman Bundy in Nevada, where there's been all kinds of prosecutorial misconduct by his prosecutors there, a holdover from the Obama administration. Even the Las Vegas Review-Journal says this is out of control between the prosecutors and the judge. They're violating the constitutional rights of the 19 defendants that are being tried there. And recently, I'm to meet with Sessions, and of course he doesn't, quote, have time, but he recently made a statement praising the prosecutors and saying, I don't take sides. Well, he's the Attorney General, and this is a federal prosecution. You don't take sides. So I'm very disappointed at what he's done. He needs to get some strength here. I mean, he needs to man up and do his job as Attorney General. But frankly, he's just rolling over because of the criticism that he's a so-called racist, which he's not, and also the investigation which is ongoing by Robert Mueller into his connections, as alleged, with the Russians. And this is a dangerous situation when we have an Attorney General who has effectively neutered himself.
Well, let me ask you this, because you go back and you look at the political biography of Jeff Sessions, and he's a guy who may speak in mild-mannered tones, but some of the actions he has taken have had great effect. For example, it was Democrat Senator Hal Heflin who moved to make sure that Jeff Sessions did not become a federal judge during the Reagan era. What did Mr. Sessions do? He became the Attorney General of Alabama, and then he ran for and won Hal Heflin's seat in the United States Senate. I can recall my own experience, Larry, being there with Jeff when he was in the Senate, and then after my time in Congress, coming back to testify to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Borders and Immigration. Jeff is one of these guys who is pretty hardcore, but he surrounds it with overwhelming civility and in a fairly mild-mannered tone. Let me just put that out here for you and see
I agree with you,
there's any possibility. Yeah, I just have this thing. He may not be stressing. He's making a public pronouncement about looking into the white supremacist groups. Is it possible that the Office of Civil Rights will also conduct, though it may not get a huge public announcement from the Attorney General, will also conduct an investigation of Antifa and the leftist hate groups, but the general only chose to trumpet, I think for obvious political reasons, the other side of that investigation? Or is your concern it will be completely shut down of any consideration of Antifa or those on the left?
Well, they may get into Antifa, although there's so many leaks in this administration that it would be hard to see that they would do this very quietly, even at my alma mater, the Justice Department. I was a federal prosecutor, as you know. But this is the sad part today, and I'm a big believer in civil rights. I'm in effect a civil rights lawyer in many ways at Freedom Watch and before that at Judicial Watch. But anytime you touch upon African Americans and you touch upon alleged racism, you can't discuss it in this country because there is reverse racism too. And Obama and Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, the two prior attorney generals, they helped whip that up. And what we see today is the result, in part, of their actions, which were so one-sided, in blaming, white police officers, even black police officers, and other actions that they took, that this is a reaction. And Sessions is afraid of that because he's been branded a racist very unfairly. And I agree, he's a very nice man. I like him. I've talked to him on the phone since he became Attorney General. He said he would review the things that he hasn't reviewed. And I took him at his word. But he's so afraid. He's like a little mouse right now. He's doing stuff with immigration. He's dealing with sanctuary cities. That's good. But beyond that, he's inert. And he's afraid of his own future. He's putting his own interests ahead of the American people because he wants not to be attacked so much by the left-wing media and other forces that are out there. But so it's not just Antifa. It's Black Lives Matter. They've advocated killing cops. They helped institute what happened. It's Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam, who's the flip side of the KKK, who's a vehement anti-Semite, anti-Christian, and anti-white. And you've got Al Sharpton, and you've got others out there. Why aren't they being investigated? Because they participated in the violence as well in Charlottesville. At least Black Lives Matter did. They were there, for sure. Pigs in blankets, fry them like bacon. That's their advocacy.
Well, Larry, you point out in your article that the president, who is drawing a lot of heat from a partisan press corps for even suggesting, ironically, what the ACLU has maintained, that there were two major hate groups, one attributed to the right, the other attributed to the left, when in essence we know that it really doesn't line up on the political spectrum that way. But you had two major groups coming after each other. And so the irony is, it would appear again that the president has an attorney general that's out of step with the president's priorities. My question to you is this: understanding government as you do, understanding the bureaucracy as it exists, if there is a major blind spot for the Trump administration, and goodness knows, they have all sorts of things to do, an incredibly urgent agenda to confront. But some of the basic tenets of government, some of the administrative positions are staffed by Obama holdovers or career bureaucrats instead of the patronage appointments that are the rights of whomever is president of the United States. So I guess the bottom line is, how much of this is Jeff Sessions and how much of this is careful, cautious proceedings based on the fact that the Justice Department is staffed up with a bunch of Obama holdovers?
That's right. I've written articles for Newsmax as well on this, JD, is that the federal programs branch of the Department of Justice and other branches are almost uniformly Obama and Clinton holdovers. And on the courts, you've got about 90% Clinton and Obama judges. That's why the president hasn't won one case at the lower court level. They're highly politicized. They have a different concept of the law. Basically, they don't believe in the rule of law, to be blunt. They do what they want by their political ideology. So it is a problem. But you have to have the courage, and the courage we saw of the president yesterday. I take my hat off to him, because everybody was feeling this, but they wouldn't say it, but only the president would say it. Where does this end? We don't want conflict in the streets. We don't want conflict between white and black. We want to be one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. But yet there's another side of this, and that is the side of the Antifas, the ultra-leftists funded by George Soros, and the radical separatist black nationalist groups like Black Lives Matter, and also Farrakhan and Sharpton and others, New Black Panthers Party. So, you know, the Attorney General needs to take the lead. He's in charge. He's the chief law enforcement officer. Don't throw it off to the president to say, where does it end? Do we get rid of? And these are great men, and they did a lot of things for our country. Does William Jefferson Clinton have to remove his middle name because it's Jefferson? I mean, this is the theater of the absurd. So the president spoke out. He had the courage to speak out. He's getting, you know, pummeled this morning by MSNBC and CNN and the rest of them, including the Washington Post, not surprisingly. But we have to have the courage to call it like it is. And we are all equal in this country. And whether you're white or black, that applies to us. And whites are now no longer in control, but we need to be treated by respect. We're not in control in the media or in the body politic of this country, and we don't have to be in control. But everybody needs to be treated with respect, and that's what the president said. But that's why you have this backlash right now. It was created by Obama, Holder, and Lynch at the Department of Justice, and Jeff Sessions needs to reverse that and hold all sides accountable now, because all sides are acting badly.
Donald Trump, we knew he would be a disruptor in a good way in the presidency, but the whole dynamic that has worked for years, where the president would make lofty statements and then others would be the lightning rod, that's been completely transformed. The president is the lightning rod, and others are more measured, and that's what you're describing about Jeff Sessions. Now, maybe putting it a bit too diplomatically, but Larry, in the minute that remains, I'm just kind of curious. You've mentioned Soros, and you mentioned the public policy of now former President Obama. But we heard that Mr. Obama was going to remain very active. He was first on the left. Again, 1 minute, Larry.
A lot of it, JD. I mean, if not most of it. Obama is still in control of the deep state. And he has a mansion over here in Colorado. I'm in Washington today, worth in excess of $8 million. The one percenters that he criticized, well, he is now a 0.1 percenter. And he, out of that so-called house, which is like a bunker, he has Valerie Jarrett, his former aide in the White House. He's got others. And he's working behind the scenes to sow this violence, just like he did when he was president. And he's smiling. Him and Michelle are smiling today because they wanted to create the situation. And they did create it. And what did they do? They were a recruiting tool for the hateful and despicable KKK. KKK was dead.
And Larry,
Now,
as I have said before, he had a chance to be a post-racial president. He became our most racial president. Larry Klayman, our time draws to a close.